Well, boys, the word on the mean streets of wrestling Twitter was that AEW needed Full Gear to be a good show. And I don't want to spoil anything. I think it was pretty good, actually. Ladies and gentlemen, Full Gear 2022 review. We are here, pay-per-view in the books, AEW's final pay-per-view, unless you count AEW presents ROH presents Final Battle, which is a very different thing altogether, obviously, as we know. Um, Hell of a time, a lot to about, like 28 matches to get into. We have an expert panel as always, but we have a different kind of panel, right? The LNG youth movement continues. We are, much like AEW, elevating new talent, bringing new guys into the main event scene. So you're seeing some familiar faces, but in a big spot here, pay-per-view review show. Chris, how are you this evening, buddy?
Doing good. Some are calling us the wayward sons of the late night Grin. I don't know.
I've heard
Some are calling us. But I'm excited.
We need to find those people and ban them. But carry on, Chris.
Great pay-per-view. I had a lot of fun. Obviously, Dukes was there. He'll share his experience. But, man, this was, like you said, a lot of people were saying that they need to hit it out of the park, and I think they did.
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of, I think a lot of us was confident it would be a good show, right? Like, because there's a general kind of trend. Like, AEW doesn't really miss on pay-per-view. I think some of their recent efforts, Forbidden Door aside, have been weaker than their norm. This felt like a return to kind of, it sounds so dumb to say glory days. They're 3 years old, but it did, right? It felt that way. Dukes, as Chris referenced there, you were there. Front row, credentialed, all that good stuff. How are you today, pal?
I'm doing good. I had a fucking blast last night. Best show I've been to pretty easily.
Not the Rampage in Atlantic City.
That was good.
It was good. Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, I think you saw a pretty good one. What was previously in the top spot? I'm intrigued because you was at Winter is Coming, right, with Brian and.
No, I was at.
No, you was at the
second
rematch. Manny was at Winter is Coming.
He was at Grand Slam too, right?
Probably the first Grand Slam.
Yeah, that was pretty epic because you had the double TV tapings. Yeah,
Brian and Kenny, and that was also my first wrestling show, so I'd go with that one.
Well, that's pretty special. It was obviously a great one to see. You did kind of allude earlier, you concerned me slightly, Dukes, but you were concerned your voice wouldn't make it. But you do sound like you're doing okay. Everything okay?
I feel much better. Yeah, I woke up and I was like, oh fuck, this is gonna be bad, but we're good. You
would have been. I mean, can you imagine the burials, the ribbing?
Yeah. That's why I tweeted it. I was like, I'm just gonna get this out of the way, just in case it's bad.
The famed hazing culture of the late night Green again.
That
confirmed Layfield was going to kick the shit out of you. All right. Now here's the thing, folks. Usually, I'm happy to tinker with these formats. Sometimes some pay-per-views you're better to just talk broadly. We'll see what comes up. I think this show was so loaded and there were so many matches. We're best to just do it old school, like the old timers would, and just go match by match and just work our way through it, because I think almost all of it's worth talking about in some way. So I think we'll go from bottom to top to bottom, whichever way you prefer. We'll start with 0 Hour, with Danhausen shenanigans that I couldn't figure out whether or not the Danhausen's hints were supposed to throw me off or just confirm to me it was in fact Danhausen. Folks, it was Danhausen. Mm-hmm. Very serious Danhausen, though.
Spooky, too.
Yes, as he joined the Best Friends plus Rocky Romero. I guess he's a best friend, or is he just a good friend? I don't know, but they're friends. And Danhausen was there. He's also a friend. They're up against the best heel faction in wrestling. The Four Horsemen, yes, the Factory, who are like a legitimate good heel act. Like we do bits. Sometimes, guys, we do so many bits about QT Marsh that I take for how good he actually is, and I watch him and I'm like, fuck, this guy's great at his job. From my perspective, perfect way to warm up the people. Dukes, what did you make of it sitting there in gorilla position?
It was fun. I was a little confused on how they were going to do the Danhausen thing because he just wasn't there for like the whole match. They just did a 5-on-4 and the Factory still got their ass kicked, which rules. Mm-hmm. And then the Danhausen music hit and people went nuts. It was pretty fun.
What did you make of the Danhausen business? Very interesting.
It was a lot less. I was very happy when I realized he wasn't going to be like a heel. He was just like mad at QT, which fucking rules.
Yes. They should have like a lights out match on Dog.
Yeah, fuck yeah. What's the match that Big Swole and Diamante did, like the 3 stages shit? They should do that.
3 strikes, was it?
Something like that. It was like pinfall, submission, and then knockout.
God, that would be a challenge for old QT to see how that goes. All right. I respect it. Chris, what did you make of this pretty loose opener? It was just kind of a fun idea. What did you make of it, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I like Danhausen. So this to me was like harmless fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was cool to see like a different side. I saw people being like, "Oh, look, he's serious now," and I guess that's one way to put it. I don't think it's a permanent thing, but it was fun to see. It was something different, and yeah, just harmless, good time.
It was apparent, and Duke, you can speak to this better than we can, but they were taking the shot from the hard camera side. They were taking like the bottom of the ring, which is the shot they take when it's pretty empty. Is it fair to say Pitt was still fighting injuries?
Yeah, on that side, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it seemed that way. I don't mean this as an insult because he's great and he's much better than this, but if all else fails, Orange Cassidy is like the best opening match guy imaginable because
Yeah.
everyone knows the hits, so he just has to play those and the place comes up, right? Like, so in that sense, it was like a really natural fit to have him here. Again, obviously he's capable of way more than that, but sometimes that's how the cards fall. QT, same thing on the heel side. A couple interesting moments with young Cole Carter, who at one point did a dive on his own team, and the cameras shot this in a way where it appeared he just did that. Now, I have to ask you, Dukes, because I'm fascinated. Did they move,
Yeah,
or
I
did he
think
just
so.
do that? They
I'm
moved.
pretty sure like the factory were like holding the best friends, and then the best friends just
Okay.
got out of the way.
That was my assumption, but you see, they didn't shoot that part. So Taz and the guys, Chris, you can attest, right? They were just like, well, I guess
Yeah.
he got confused. I don't know, man.
Yeah, exactly.
which was quite the moment. I respected it on some level. It was that insane. But yeah, he had a couple of quick moments. I thought Lee Johnson looked really sharp. Again, these are little things. It was a 10-man tag to kick off the show, and I thought I did a nice job. Komoroto getting pinned is hilarious in so many ways. Like, it doesn't surprise me because I think we all know like it's a stacked roster. They don't have anything for him in terms of beyond this. But on some level, it is funny that on that team they were like, Nick,
Yeah.
lights, brother. You know what I mean? It will never not make me laugh. So that was my main takeaways. A fun opener. Crowd enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It's always fun to figure out how Trent is going to somehow like hurt himself in these matches where no one else is working hard. And he did it again here, like threw himself into the barricade. That's what Trent does. Next match, I haven't seen any talk about it because there was another 100 matches after this, but I thought this was just terrifically well wrestled. Ricky Starks, Brian Cage, semi-final match for the Full Gear, but not actually Full Gear World Title Eliminator Tournament. Man, I thought this was damn good. Ricky's selling the fire. He was just such a great babyface in there. Chris, what did you make of this tournament match? It's been a weird tournament, but once they've got inside the ropes, generally, I think the guys got the job done. What did you make of this semi-final?
Yeah, just like you mentioned with Trent, like for me, Ricky's one of those wrestlers where if he lands on his neck, anywhere near his neck, I just like wince is weird. But so yeah, they had a couple of those spots, especially the powerbomb one where I was like,
Yeah.
I kind of had to like look in a little closer because I was worried. But no, it was really good. I think, Brian Cage, we talk a lot about him, and I think with him, a lot of the time it's like the spot that he's in. But he like when he delivers really well. So I think this was a great spot. Him and Ricky obviously have really good chemistry. So I think this is good for both of them, but especially Ricky, just to see where this goes.
Yeah. Also, I mean, you mentioned Cage. I'm like, this is going to sound horrifically inside baseball, I don't mean it that way, but credit to him on that Rochambeau too, because he helped Ricky out a bunch. I mean, that was a challenge, right? That's a big time move, and Ricky is daring. He tries to do it to everyone. I mean, if they book Ricky Starks and Paul White, Paul would be fucking going up for that, but I don't know if he'd come down. But yeah, that was, I mean, you could tell Cage did some lifting there, and I thought he performed very well. Ricky's so damn popular. Duke, she was in the building.
Yeah.
This babyface Ricky Starks push has got some legs, hasn't it?
It's definitely fucking working. People love him. He's super over. And he does like a bunch of little shit that like pops the crowd in the match. Like he kicked out and then he slapped Cage in the back of the head. Fucking ruled.
Yes. It's weird. Like I think sometimes people don't know how to take Ricky as a wrestler, as a worker. And like I think our friend Manny is a good example there. Manny, he's not a hooper, right? Would be the phrasing. He's kind of an old school worker, right? Like you mentioned, like he's very detail heavy. He's selling is kind of the crux of it. I still remain bullish. I think this is one of the top guys, and I will say, and we'll get to a little bit more later, but I don't know about you fellas, but MJF and Ricky Starks, Winter is Coming.
Yeah.
I think that's like new era kind of stuff, right? Like, I'm intrigued. Chris, what do you think? How does Ricky fare? We see how over MJF is. We'll get to that later. But like, do Do you think Ricky's ready to step into that kind of program? Because I'd sure love to find out.
Absolutely. And I think, you mentioned how over he is. I think he's one of those guys where, like, people like us will look at him and be like, I want to root for this guy because you can see the potential. Like, you can see that where he can go in terms of star power.
Yeah.
So you're like, damn, like, and he's just good. Like, there's no where like the promos are good. When he hits, he hits. And that feud, like the promos that we get in that feud would be, really, really exciting to see. And obviously, like, to look at now, that feud, but also that can be something they can set up for like years. That could be one of the feuds that they have. Same way we talk about like Yuta and Garcia, like that can be one of the cornerstones. So we'll see. I think he's ready for it.
Yeah, and the promos are probably the most compelling. I mean, I'd love to see the match because I think they have very similar philosophies. But promo-wise, Dukes, what do you think? What do you think of Ricky's chances in like a one-on-one promo segment with MJF? How do you think he'd fare?
Pretty good, especially if it's next. It would be next week, right? Probably after the match.
Right. Yeah.
That would be in Chicago, so I think Ricky would have a pretty good chance. And then the match is in Ricky's hometown, so I think it's all going to go very fucking well. I'm excited for it.
It feels fresh, man. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but like it feels like kind of, to me anyway, it feels like a lock now that we've seen the finish of the pay-per-view. There's a lot here. Okay, up next we have something that in normal wrestling promotions would be one of the great moments of the year. I maintain is still one of the great moments of the year, but I am aware that it was followed by a 4-hour pay-per-view because AEW is an insane wrestling promotion. And sometimes, and I'll say this, because you fellas are both like, part of why I want to do more shows with you guys is you both have a very genuine like enthusiasm and excitement for what AEW has brought to wrestling, right? And like sometimes, from my perspective, we can cover things too closely. I sometimes have to remind myself that like, while I have gripes with AEW, they are still the promotion who will inexplicably just put Jun Akiyama on a pre-show for his first ever singles match in America and be like, here it is, one of these like great wrestling moments, right? And it's like the main event of 0 Hour. This was special. I'll kind of just set a few things up here. The pre-match promo can't be overstated in terms of its importance from a narrative perspective. Like Eddie did a great job on Rampage of selling with his eyes and his face. Like that moment when he was speechless and the people, shout out to you guys, Dukes, like started chanting Eddie, like to try and get him through the promo. That was a beautiful, beautiful moment. I'll be real, and I think the world of Akiyama. The match was better than I thought it would be because Junior's getting up there. Like, I've seen him have some matches where he doesn't seem too willing to bump. Not the case here. He was going for it. They had a really good match. The post-match we'll talk about as its own separate thing because that was like one of the classic AEW moments in that only AEW would have a moment as weird and as awesome as that. So let's talk the match and just kind of that whole moment. Eddie Kingston, Jun Akiyama. Chris, what did you make of what is, I think, fairly been, titled a dream match? It's such a big built-up thing online. What did you make of it in the end?
Well, yeah, especially because of, we know how much that means to Eddie to wrestle, like, his favorite guys. The promo before was exactly the same feelings you were talking about of like, you at home are just going, oh man, this guy, man, that's our guy. So it was awesome to see the crowd, cheer him on like that. The match was awesome. It was one of those things where you can tell that the two wrestlers like really wanted to work each other, really wanted this, and have been wanting this for a long time. Like you can tell there's certain stuff that happens during the match where you're like, this is something that I know Eddie's probably been thinking about wanting to do for a while. Like especially some of the exchanges where they're going, like so those are great to see, and I'm just happy Eddie got that moment. Obviously the post match was really fun too. But yeah, it was awesome. I had a really good time watching this one.
Eddie certainly was not going to let Uncle June think that he doesn't hit very hard. I mean, Eddie hits hard. They may have been the hardest chops ever thrown. I mean, he was. Akiyama's chest was like destroyed within seconds. It was physical and kind of graphic in that way. Dukes, this was. I mean, I'm very jealous of you for being there. This one, this felt like a magical moment in the building, brother. How was it?
Yeah, it was crazy, and like the chops being so like violent. I don't know if it came across on pay-per-view, but the way the ring was mic'd was like kind of weird, but like in a good way. Like there was one corner. It was like if you're looking at the ramp, it's like the back left corner.
Yeah.
When he chopped, it would fucking like hit the microphone.
Yeah.
And there was like feedback and shit. It was fucking awesome. The stairs were mic'd like that too. Like every stair bump was so fucking loud. It was so funny.
That rules.
Yeah.
That was the corner. The bottom left was where Eddie did like the they turned each other around a couple of times, right? And Eddie he was throwing bombs in there, man. In the end, as expected, King goes over, and they had this kind of. I actually was surprised. Gallagher kind of misread the finish, and this is not a critique. I mean, he had hundreds of notes in front of him, but the finish was very much a case of like Eddie getting him up to put him away, right? And Akiyama, like as this sort of proud warrior, didn't try and block the back fist. He just like stood there and put me out, man. Like it's what it is. It was beautiful. I love the way he sold it. Immediately after the match, King was like in tears, and they had this wonderful show of respect that was like it in anyone else's hands, it would have felt so over the top and ridiculous. But because everyone knows it was real, it was like this incredible moment. And Akiyama just seemed so amazed this was a real thing that like people cared this way. He is not a particularly like flashy personality, as you probably noticed, right? Like he's a guy who's very like that's part of the appeal of him. He's very workmanlike in that way. And he just seemed amazed that anyone would give a shit enough to like see this as this incredible dream match in America. Big hug, the hands up and all that good stuff. And then King gets the mic and does this like pay-per-view sell.
Fucking ruled.
He leads with Moxie's going to kick the shit out of MJF. You guys boo, and then he says, "Oh, he's a piece of shit." Anyway, people just laughed. What was the reaction live as fun as it looked at home? Dukes to the promo because it was
he was like he's still a piece of shit, and you all know it. He's like I get it's your piece of shit, but whatever. He's like I call a spade, brother.
Incredible personality, Chris. Only Eddie Kingston would produce something quite as chaotic and emotional and uplifting as this. Right, this was peak Eddie Kingston.
Right off the bat, he's like, "Oh, I know Excalibur's got to tell you like what." He was apologizing to him, and he was saying like how much time we got, whatever. So you knew right off the bat that it was gonna be it was gonna be off the rails. Every pay-per-view should start like that. Every pickup show should end like that because there's no like what was they said like we're at 59 minutes, like just buy the thing, like we're already here.
He's like, what are you waiting for?
And he does this thing too, which I love, where it's like it works two ways. He always makes a point of putting over the women's matches, which is like cool because let's be honest, like that's a thing AEW fucks up with a lot of time. But it's also clever because King is smart enough to know that he is likely to feud with any dude on the roster, and he has to pretend he has a beef with all of them.
Yes.
So it's like his way of like he can actually just be like, man, Jamie and Tony are going to kill it without breaking character.
He called it too. He fucking called it.
We need to talk about that. I'm very glad you were there for that, actually, dude. That was cool. So the 0 hour was a home run. I mean, it was an hour of wrestling TV. It was one of the best of the year. Eddie Kingston's moment is what you'll remember it for. Again, the fact that we'll remember the 0 hour for anything is kind of a good idea of where this pay-per-view was at in terms of quality. Special moment. I would love them to run it back on the other side and maybe do something in Japan. I think that'd be a really cool moment. I think King would like that. So they could do that. If not, you got the moment. It was fucking awesome. Nothing, no issue there. Before we move on, there was a post-match promo with Eddie Kingston, which, as I say, Jason just brought up. And he kind of he looked ahead at last, right? There's been a lot of kind of interesting character. I think he's done a good job of it, but I think in some ways they've kind of removed some of the nuance that makes King great. And he's just been mad all the time, which is fine, but to an extreme as of late, right, Chris? It's been a little much.
Right.
And in this promo, he basically said, I need to move on past that. I'm looking on. And he mentioned the world title. It feels to me, Chris, like we're going to get Eddie Kingston back in the thick of things here. Is that your kind of read on the general proceedings with him this night?
Absolutely, because like King at his core is like he's a fighter, right? But looking back to the Mox promo, to the Mox feud, when for the title, like that's the goal. That's like he has his eyes set on that. When he cut the promo about like I want to go back to my mother and show her the title and be like this is what it was all for. We know after that, that like that's his moment. That's going to be when that happens, like that's the peak. So it's nice to see him, talk about whatever. I've done all of this, but that's what my eyes are set on. It's nice to see him have that again, where he has like he's been, and I think we've been critical of it at times, where like it seems like he's been stuck or when he was with the Jericho thing, like it seemed like that was dragging on for a while, and we just wanted something more for him. And he's again every time that he has one of those things, even if we do criticize how long it goes, he knocks it out of the park. And I think just it's nice. It's a breath of fresh air to see that he's still got his eyes set on that.
Absolutely, and it doesn't hurt that there is now a world champion who is like, if you could design an Eddie Kingston opponent, it would be they're both New Yorkers, but man, they feel like they're on completely other sides of that coin. Both kind of similar in like they're both traditionalists in a lot of ways. Feels like a natural match, too. So we're gonna get that for the belt, I think, aren't we?
Yeah, I hope it's a Grand Slam.
Yeah,
so I could see it, but
that atmosphere.
Eddie wins, and then like the next week,
I think that's the one.
Back, fucking rule.
Well, we'll get into this later, but I'm personally, my current stance is this is a big moment for Eddie because now that Max is a heel champ, we need to figure out like how we're getting out. What's the end here? I don't know if Eddie's the hero who should save the day. I think there's a certain cowboy that our friend Dukes loves that should be into that conversation because he was the ace once upon a time, right? And we need to circle back. But Eddie feels like the perfect candidate for a Lex Luger-esque, gets the belt. Maybe doesn't have it for long, but you get that moment on TV.
Yeah,
Grand Slam on TV would be. Yeah, it'd be something. I also would like them to do, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, but seriously, like MJF versus Sting for the belt. I know it won't be like a great match, but like just give them like 7 minutes and let them tell the story. I'm convinced this would be like awesome.
Yeah,
awesome
you would hit like the Scorpion Death Drop and get him in the submission, and Max would sell his ass off, and it would fucking rule.
You do one like whole shit, like fucking Regal gets on the apron or something, and the people get so mad about it. And you never have to go back to it, but it's just it's a moment, right? It's something works for it. But anyway, we'll get to more of that later. 0 hour in the books, kind of set the stage for. Obviously, it was a great pay-per-view. Tremendous stuff just before the pay-per-view even started. Okay, let's get into it. With a match that I am still thinking about, that I just did not see it coming. And, I didn't get what they were going to do with a cage. I thought they should do a plunder match and kind of, weaponry and that stuff. But a bloody cage match, I just didn't see Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus pulling it off. I was completely wrong. I mean, I thought this match was one of the best matches on the show. I'm actually writing a full review of it because I just thought it was so impressive. So much to like here. Let's kind of pick it apart a little bit. Dukes, I'll start with you. What did you make of the opening match, cage match, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy? Massively over-delivered, I thought. What did you think?
Yeah. I thought it was going to be like good. I had like a suspicion that it was going to be like, it was going to over-deliver just because of, our expectations of Luchasaurus. But I knew Jack was going to do some crazy shit. But it had like that like viciousness that it needed.
Yeah.
It had like the fucking heat. It impressed me.
Blood too, brother. Blood.
First match of the show.
There was a great visual on the television broadcast. That I know Chris will know exactly what I'm talking about immediately, where Jack just got blood and Luchasaurus like pushed his head against the cage, right? And like it was gross.
It was on the apron, right?
Yeah, and the blood like poured down the cage fence. Right? It was beautiful. Oracle would have been so excited. That stood out immediately. Chris, what did you make of the opening match? I assume the blow off. What did you make of it?
Totally over delivered. Especially how I talk about Luchasaurus a lot of times. I was very impressed. This was honestly, I'll be very candid. This was the match I was least looking forward to on the card, just because I was like, this is dragged. We've seen this already, but I underestimated what the cage would add to this match, and especially the lawn dart spot into the cage, the blood. It made me remember, and I think commentary did a great job of reminding us that Jungle Boy has known this man since he was 10 years old, right? And above all else, above the dinosaur stuff and all that's what's at the core of the story. So, all that, the blood, I think Jungle Boy's facial expressions throughout the match, I'm sure it wasn't difficult because the blood was all over the place, but he did a great job. JR being into Jungle Boy is always something that gets you excited for Jungle Boy. And I don't know, the name change is great too. Very happy about that. And he talked about that a little bit afterwards, but just everything, the visual of him on top of the cage, it was awesome.
Yeah, Shoot and I actually had a conversation on, I think, Friday about Jack, and like we both we agree, like we'll go down on this ship, you know, we'll die on it, like we'll die on the hill, because like, I know he's a little bland at times, but I think he's such a classical wrestling babyface. And I love what he can be and what at times he's shown us. I thought this was the best performance of his career. And folks, I'm going to get to the dinosaur in a second because he deserves love here. But I just thought Jack was like spectacular here. Like his fire, the way he sold, the desperation he wrestled with, the fact that the elbow looked so like insane was like made it way more scary. Like because he kind of fell short, right?
Yeah,
Like
he was talking.
Yeah.
He was talking afterwards about that. Like once he got to the top, he realized that I think like Luchasaurus was too close, so he couldn't come at an angle where he could land on him. Because if he was landing on him, it would be his entire weight. So he was like, I have to miss a little short. And dude, like the fact that he couldn't break his fall like that had to.
Yeah.
It was scary.
He basically took
tough.
like a fucking 20-foot arse bump from the top of the fucking deal.
Yeah.
You know, because all that did probably was just fucking, you know, make it quicker, right? The elbow part of it was like, yeah, it was wild.
I was on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
I was like on the angle of the corner where he jumped from. So I just like saw it through like the big steel like cross beam thing. I just saw him go, and I was like, "Oh,
straight down."
Yeah,
and he fell right. See, straight down. Like it was not like he sort of gracefully flew. I mean this sort of was a compliment. I thought it added to the way the match felt, which was desperate. Yeah, I think it's the best performance of his career. But I do have to say, you know, the match, as great as he sold, inherently this kind of match, you're giving your heel a lot of space, or you're giving him room to fill. The match is built around he's going to sell for the first 50% of this match. Jack sold, and look, he can sell all day, but if the heel isn't bringing it, that means nothing. Luchasaurus, I thought was really good here. Actually, I don't want to give credit to someone who's like, but it certainly feels like Christian may have got in his head a little bit about like being a traditional wrestling big man. And I know everyone rolls their eyes about that stuff and like, oh, work like a giant, all that shit. Look, there's a time and a place for it. In a cage match, he had to be a monster. And he was nasty in there, man. I mean, he was vicious. How many times he threw Jack into the cage? I mean, good Lord. It was like, it honestly felt, they went so far with his dominance that at times I assumed he was just going to win, even though my brain knew better. And that speaks to what of a job. I mean, I remember at one point he hit his like big move off the shoulders. And I was like, fuck, man, maybe he's just going to pin him. I don't know. Like, he beat him up for so much of the match. So I thought it was an absolute home run. There's a part of me that thinks they put like the table and all the stunt stuff in there because that was like what, you know, you do now. And this is meant as a comment. They actually did such a good job of a traditional cage match. They could have not even done that and it'd been fine. Yeah. But obviously, we just spoke about the table spot. There's no, you know, it was great. But if you had told me before that I think they could have had a cage match without any shenanigans and it would have been great, I would have told you you're fucking insane. Because like I didn't see this being in either of their. I mean, I think World of Jab, I didn't even think he could pull off this kind of match. I thought it was really, really good. Obviously, part of our praise is because none of us thought it was going to be like a classic or anything. But my God, I really did think it was good. So credit to both. There's obviously a real chemistry there. Luchasaurus long term is really hard for me to. I don't know, honestly. I mean, he's still called Luchasaurus, which is difficult for me on a personal level. But I love Jack. He's a guy I think you're going to see wrestle MJF at some point. I would assume, right, guys? It feels like a natural way. So, open match in the books, and then the graphic flashed up. Up next was a match that I think everyone agreed was probably like most likely to win match of the night. You know, like it's such a lock to be great. We had a lot here before the bell even rung. Dukes, I want to go straight to you on the entrance. This was quite the deal. I imagine it was great live.
I couldn't like fathom what I was seeing. It was like magical, honestly. Like it sounds fucking dumb, but like it was like you could tell it was a moment. Yes. Like it was so over dramatic and corny, like the graphics on the screen, and it was like so will carry on.
It was amazing,
and I was like, oh, they're fucking doing it. It was. And then the song hit, and I was like, I fucking won.
It was, it felt like a lot more, it felt like it meant a lot more than just these three great wrestlers going back to. Right? It was certainly, Chris, there was certainly something more like symbolic at play here. And I think that was expressed with some of the chants that we got, where it was almost like this like emotional release, like this relief. Yeah. And look, I know people will always like, I've seen people debating this shit, like, fucking let people chant stuff at wrestling shows. Jesus wept. You know what I mean? Where are we at now? It was a fucking great moment. Chris, what do you think of kind of this idea that their return was about a lot more than just those three dudes coming back? It was like it represented something, right?
Oh, definitely. And I think you touched on it before when you talked about how this felt like AEW. And I said it, I was talking to my dad about this. I was like, this felt like when we, like, thinking back to when, because I've been watching it obviously since the first press conference. I've been into it, and like this brought me back to like that when I was remembering what what it was like the first moments, like the AEW originals and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the press conference in the parking lot and all that stuff, like that all kind of rushed back to me in that moment. And it's also a matter of like, it's been since September that we've had like all these questions, these articles, the rumors, everything that's come up. And this was the first moment, like you said, to let all those emotions get released.
Yeah.
And I think they definitely took advantage of that in the entrance, making it what it was. The song was incredible. The fans were singing along to it. This, like, what carried this obviously was the return, but it was the fact that, it was a return to the like core of what AEW is. And it was a return we've been waiting for 2 months for something on either end of what happened, for something to come out of this. And this is what it was.
Absolutely. And I think the atmosphere, like, to your point, very much felt like the only example I can give is it reminded me of All Out 2021, which is, I understand that's like a middle of the timeline, right? That's like Punk's first match. But, I think we all think of that as this like extraordinary moment of crowd interest and excitement. Like everyone had these like mega reactions and every match had heat. And this match it's the most energetic an AEW audience has felt in, I wouldn't even want to like put a name on it. I mean, it felt like you guys in the building, Dukes, were you were just going nuts. And that's why look, in an ideal world, if I was sitting there, would I have tried Colt Cabana? I don't fucking know, but you guys seem to be feeling it. I mean, who gives a shit, right? That seemed to be the atmosphere. Was it very celebratory, very triumphant?
Yeah,
Dukes?
the fuck CM Punk chant was in response to like a very small CM Punk chant that started.
All right.
Yeah, there was a group of people behind. They were like actually like a couple rows behind me that started chanting CM Punk and shit. And they got everybody turned around and just fucking stared a hole into them. And they were like, "Fuck you!" And then the chant started. It kind of ruled. I chanted it. I don't care. I chanted it. I had a fucking CM Punk phone case. It was fun.
Because it's wrestling, man.
It's exactly. It's the moment. It's in the moment.
I would much rather you sit in the crowd and chant that than at CM Punk and say, "Go fuck yourself." I mean, to me, they're different things to me. I know literally that, like, you're a wrestling show. Who gives a shit? Now, we talked about all of this stuff, but obviously the elephant in the room here is that, of course, this was a match involving Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, the Lucha Bros, and Pac. It was exactly what you assumed it would be. I'm sure for some people that's not for them, and that's absolutely fine. I have no issue with it. I thought it was outrageous. Some of the things these fellas do. I mean, it's just like a little thing. But Phoenix, he takes the DDT on the apron and like lands on his feet on the outside because he spiked himself so viciously. Like, level of execution here. The problem with this match is people try and recreate it, and you can't. Like, these dudes are they're freaks, man. These dudes they're not human.
No.
The elite guys haven't wrestled in 2.5 months, and they're in there like just boom, like it's so easy. Extraordinary match. Chris, what did you make of the in-ring here? I mean, this was spectacular.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like when I see trios matches try to replicate this, I call it just like it's an elite trios match. Like that is what they're good at. I saw them in 2017 work a match like this in like Fort Lauderdale and like in front of 300 people. I saw them work something similar to this. So it's awesome, especially when you have like such great chemistry between the Lucha Bros and the Bucks and Kenny and Pac specifically. You're gonna get your Young Bucks, Lucha Bros, coordinated stuff. Like that's just what you're gonna get. I saw some people complaining about that. I think for me, like the criticism about that is sure, like it's valid if you don't like that and it's not for you, cool. But to me, that like from a story perspective escalates the fact that like these guys have worked together.
Yeah.
If you've watched, the rivalry, you know how long it goes. So you understand that they know each other better than any other teams in the division know each other. So it doesn't like I get the gripes there, but To me, like, yeah, the Phoenix spike on the apron was insane. Kenny and Pac had their exchanges where he goes for, what was it, when he does that thing where he jumps over him and spikes him, and then
Yes.
Pac kept up. Oh, it was awesome. Also, like, during the CM Punk chant, Matt looked out to the crowd and started doing like an air guitar.
Yeah.
Did he? I didn't see that.
Yeah, he did.
It was really funny. And then they kind of like whispered to each other, so they were saying they said something about it. But man, it was awesome. More of Pac and Kenny, man. Anytime they lock up is.
Bro, Pac's bumping is like.
Yeah.
What about when Kenny like mistimed his kick and Pac just was like, well, fuck it, I guess I'll just fly for this thing, and he like just launched himself in the air like he did. It was ridiculous. It was incredible. My thing on this, like the style is like is where a lot of my pals don't fuck with this style. You know, I think the biggest, counter is look at this show. There was a true wrestling buffet, and that's something AEW were really good at. And
they've always advertised it as that.
Yeah,
they've said it since day one that it's going to be a wrestling buffet.
And this is like the top of the line for that like genre, such a thing. That.
Yeah.
And there was other than we just about Eddie Kingston versus Junior Akiyama. Like there was different shit on here, But right. I thought it was absolutely spectacular. Dukes, what did you make of this thriller here for the trios belts?
Yeah, it was fucking absurd. Kenny is huge.
Yeah.
Like giant.
Great.
It's insane.
Yeah.
He moves like, I mean, we saw it in the last trios match they had, when they won the titles, but he's like he's in full form. He looks crazy. The Bucks are like effortless. Death Triangle has the coolest fucking entrance ever with the spotlights. Fucking rules. Absolutely. And like when Kenny went for the V trigger, Pac dodged it and hit the fucking German off the ropes. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And then the finish was, fucking awesome. I didn't see it going at all. I was stunned. I stood there with my mouth open. I was like,
and what was brilliant about it was they'd already introduced the hammer and he'd failed to use it. You assumed that was the finish, right? And then they split Death Triangle. So going back to it was really smart idea. And that's where I think, I don't give them all the credit for this, but I think the Bucks, from my experience watching them, are very good at like knowing what the wrestling fan is trained to expect. So, like, as a wrestling fan, when the hammer comes in and he doesn't use it, it's like, well, that's the end, and then Pat will be mad at Phoenix, and that's all very logical and fine. So then when they go back to it, you're actually stunned. One thing on it, and I saw someone brought up in the chat, I wish, after distracting Rick Knox twice on times he didn't use it, I wish that had come up with something to get Rick Knox, because he was watching it, right? And it was like, that's the one thing I just wish somehow they figured out a way to get Rick Knox looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because, of course, being Rick Knox, he just stared directly at it, and I was like, oh, fuck, man, come on. Anything, could have done anything, but it's whatever. Tiniest thing. But the finish, we didn't even really talk about like the result, right? We talked about the finish, but I was very surprised. The best of 7 business. Where do we stand on this, boys? Duke's a big pump of the fist. Duke's go straight.
We didn't even get the graphic in the building. I had no idea until like the main event.
My God.
It was. I was like, everyone in the Discord was like, "Oh my God, best of 7," and I was like, "Of what?" I had no idea. Yeah, I'm fucking fired up. The one week, there's like a week off in between Dynamites and it's fucking Wrestle Kingdom. Like,
good Lord, man. Kenny must have made up for lost time, right?
Yeah.
Chris, you on board? You fired up for this best of 7 business?
Very on board, especially because of the finish of this match. I think there's a lot from like an in-ring perspective. I'm expecting a lot of the same, which obviously I'm hyped for. It's awesome. But from a story perspective, because of the fact that it spans like 2 months, something like that, a month and a half, a bit. You could do a lot with it, and to see where Phoenix goes, see if because he felt bad about it kind of a little bit afterwards. To see where they go with that, and to see what else comes up in the 7 in the series, it's going to be interesting. I have a lot of faith that, especially as long as they don't go too far. Like how the elite can sometimes get too far into their own. So I feel like right. As long as they like stay on that line, I think it can be a really exciting story of the series.
Because I think we can all agree they're not going to be low on ideas, right? Like my initial reaction was like, "Oh God, that could be a lot," and then I thought they've definitely got like an outline for what they want to do. Like, if you don't like their matches, and that's fine, but like the Elite and Dev Train were not going to show up and be like, well, fuck, how are we going to get through 7 matches? They absolutely already have like some idea of how they're going to do different
100%.
matches and different ideas and story to tell across. So in that sense, and this is very nerdy, I know, but like it intrigues me as just like a sort of, it's like a fucking experiment, right? Like a promotion that almost avoided rematches, now going to do 7 and 2. And I think we all agree these guys are creative enough to come up with a bunch of different things. So it's interesting, it's exciting. One last thing on this match, and this is saying I think we can all talk to us. We all watch AEW with our folks. Papa's watching wrestling. Dukes and I were talking about Chris Jericho being an asshole before in the worlds of dads watching wrestling. Biggest heel in wrestling. The biggest thing I would just quickly like to say is there is an idea that a casual wrestling fan watches this kind of match and he's like not into it because it's so like choreographed. I cannot say this enough. I will do it one last time. There is no style of wrestling that the casual wrestling fan, in my personal experience, not much experience, but in my personal experience, enjoys more than this one. Mm-hmm. At no point has anyone casual in my life ever watched this kind of match and said, hey, Joe, why didn't Penta sell his hand? I mean, unfortunately, that is not a thing I've experienced. Now, Dukes, tell me if I'm wrong here. I mean, I know you would Papa Dukes, right? Full Gear. Yeah. Did he turn his back on the super kick spots?
No,
did he say
he
this?
Did not.
He did not.
No, not at all. He definitely is more into like the back and forth type stuff. He doesn't really like you. I can tell he's bored when like someone just like doing a heat segment, no matter who it is. He's like, fuck, he's getting his ass kicked. I'm like, yeah.
Exactly. Chris, same experience for you, I assume.
Absolutely, and I can give you one more because like now in my apartment, now I'm home, but in my apartment, at college, sometimes I'll just be like, hey, wrestling's on today. Like, let's just whatever, let's put it on, see what's going on. And I know what's going on. But I'll just put it on, and I can tell you guys from experience that if anybody that doesn't know about wrestling is willing to sit down and sit through 2 minutes, just 2 minutes of any form of wrestling, an elite trios match isn't going to be the end all of like what makes them be like, no. It's like if they're okay with seeing, Dax do his like, jabs and stuff and kind of, suspend the disbelief of like, he's kind of pulling it a little bit. The Young Bucks spot with Lucha Bros is going to be like it's going to be the least of the worries at that point. It's not going to drive anybody away.
And let me be clear, it doesn't mean you have to like it.
Absolutely,
you don't have to like anything.
However,
I would like us to end the argument that it is like business exposing, and brother, it's professional wrestling in 2022. In terms of business exposing, we're already cooked. We're finished. Right. We lost that war 30 years ago. It's over. Let it go.
If anything's going to keep their attention, it's going to be the match that's going 120 miles an hour. Like there's no, you know what I'm saying? Like we love the heat segments. We love like a build to a hot tag type of thing that might take a little longer. But if there's anything that's going to keep the attention of somebody that doesn't actively watch this, it's going to be something that's like always constantly moving. It's going to be Nick doing a swanton to the outside. It's going to be, you know what I'm saying? Like that type of stuff.
And from my experience, if you get someone into it, then it's actually down the line they begin to appreciate like, a great storyteller. Because if they get into them emotionally, like an Eddie Kingston's a good example, like then they can feel it without realizing they're feeling it. But I mean, I just think that's worth knowing from we work like that perspective. It's just, it amazes me sometimes. Like I see these people that I just assume never watch wrestling, anyone that doesn't watch really like, oh, imagine someone just watching the Young Bucks. It's like, yeah, man, like they'd be kind of blown away by the fact they do 101 moves every fucking 10 minutes. And obviously, they're great storytellers too. But we get what we're talking about here. Incredible match. I thought it was the best match of the night. Just before we move on, I'm intrigued. Dukes, best match of the night, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Chris, best match of the night for you? This one? If not, just say no. We can get to it. But...
It's tough because I think one of the next ones, the 4-ways. The 4-way's tough, and then Jamie Tony's fucking awesome too.
That's my other one.
That makes sense.
I don't know.
That's fair. We'll get to those shortly. First, unfortunately, this is my only miss of the night. Personally, I hope you guys liked it. Fine, but my only miss of the night, Jade, Cargill, and Nyla Rose. I didn't ever think this was a particularly good idea. I didn't quite understand the thinking behind this in any way, really, character-wise or physically. I didn't think it was like a disaster or anything. I just thought it was really challenging for them, especially after that match.
Yeah.
It's just so like what a weird style. I never understood it, man. Like it's one thing to do like hoss fight thing, but you need to have a certain level of like connective tissue there, you know. And Jade is just not really a sell as much as she had to sell here. I did not think this needed 8 minutes. I thought that was kind of insane, and I feel bad saying that because we all want the women to get more time in there, but case by case, this would have been better as a 3-minute like bombs, you know. They tried to work something more extended. I didn't think it was particularly good, unfortunately. Chris, what did you make of the TBS title match?
I thought it went downhill after Nyla's entrance, which even then was only because of Vicky. That I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's cool. The outside parts didn't work for me. Like, Jade trying to lift Nyla up actually made, to me, Jade look worse. Yeah. And that kind of hurt me a little bit. I think what you said, it should have just been bombs. It should have been quick, like, because the thing is, the build didn't help the match that we got. The match that we got was, like, it was supposed to be two larger, you know, just big towns going at each other. And then what we got, like, wasn't – I think it tried to be that at some points.
Right.
But the outside part kind of killed that for me. And then the build, obviously, if you're going to do the build, which, by the way, they've done before of the stealing the title thing. If you're going to do that and you're going to have, like, Nyla running away and, like, stealing the belt and stuff, that doesn't make me want to see – like, I don't care as much for them just going at each other like that. It doesn't – what helps for me is, like, standoffs there and, like, I don't know, more, like, face-to-faces, I guess. But just it was – I think this match was dead before it started when it came to the build.
So basically the idea that the story they told was better suited to like a chicken shit heel against Jade.
Right, yeah.
But they wanted to also have a hoss fight, right? Like, yeah, I understand you completely. A disconnect there for sure. Dukes, what did you make of this one? Any kind of live perspective that changed things? What did you think?
No, it was fine. I didn't think it was like, you know, egregious or anything. It wasn't like bad. It was just kind of there. Just kind of happened. Yeah. Which sucks to say because I actually really like Jade. I think she's had some like really good performances, but this just it didn't kind of mesh.
I do look, and I mean this is what it is. I think there is a bigger conversation to have about like what we do with Jade from like a big picture perspective. You know, like in the sense that if your actual goal here is to make her like a crossover star, I think you're failing on that front as much as you're failing on any other. Like she's hot, she's not on the shows very well.
And the crowd doesn't really react like
right. You know, I mean, if you're gonna, it's almost one of those cases. If you're gonna do it right, right? Like just go for it. To me, right now, they're in this bizarre middle ground where she's undefeated, but you could also watch the show and kind of almost miss her presence a lot of times. It's a weird place to have her.
And it's so confusing because it brings up the conversation of like what happens when she loses the title, right? And then it's a conversation that whenever it comes up, nobody has an answer. Like, and that's a problem.
Absolutely, and I think it's. The other problem is that no one knows what's next within the reign, right? So it's like that feels like the obvious next step. But I will say in Jade's defense, because she's still someone who's a brand new wrestler, and like sometimes you have to protect your wrestlers with matchmaking, right? And I think this was a bad choice, and that's not a reflection of Nyla. That's not a reflection of Jade. It's just a case of not everyone needs to have a pay-per-view match. I thought this was a wrong choice, and that's not hindsight. I never got it. So. There you go. I think hopefully they can find something more compelling for Jade. I would like to see Nyla, still in the picture, but I get the sense she's probably going to rotate out again for a little bit. And I have to be honest, it bums me out that this was her like rotation in because this was a tough go of it, man. Like she didn't
love Nyla too. I love Nyla, like especially like her when her real life personality kind of like. Seeps into it. It's really funny. Like you could tell that if given the right story, I guess, and build to a match like this, it could have been more interesting. And I don't know what the ceiling would have been, but it's tough.
Yeah, there's something there. I think we're all kind of. I hope she stays in the picture just so we can find something else for her to do rather than like this was it and she goes away for the rest of the year, which I think is likely. But we'll kind of see. How things fall. Let me quickly show some love to our pal Frank, who's resubscribed with Prime. 5 months now he's with us. He says, all love to your brother, Joe. But I howled at that story about him and Mark Henry. Dukes, you was there with the Mark Henry business, wasn't you? You stood behind Mark.
Yeah.
Yes. Quite the imposing fella. I don't know if you'd have taken him in a fight. Yeah, he was very big. Very, very big. But thank you, Frank. I appreciate you. Thanks for resubscribing. Top man. Okay. Chris, you just mentioned this one. Ring of Honor World title. Fatal 4-way match. Chris Jericho, Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, and Sammy Guevara. This was a build that was very divisive and polarizing, but I think we all agreed once they got in there, they were going to, produce something pretty good, pretty strong. I think they certainly managed that. There was a lot of interesting things with Sammy. We got that great moment with Bryan and Claudio, locked on. A lot to like about this one with the Ring of Honor title, Chris. You said it was one of your favorites tonight. Speak on it, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hate to be the one to say it, guys, but Sammy was cooking. Sammy, I impressed me. I was upset when they announced it and it wasn't Garcia, but after the match, I can see why. I can see that it worked really well with Sammy's what the high flying brought to the match was a different element than what the rest of the guys were doing.
I agree.
And I could see, look, I love Garcia and I love him now, and I know that in the future he's going to be incredible. But I think in this match, if he would have been in here, not only do you not get the storytelling part that you get with Sammy as much kind of towards the end, but I think Garcia, there's a good chance that he could have just faded into the background of this match if he was in it. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was awesome. I saw people it was great to see obviously because they told it, and it was good to see that it did its job of the story that doesn't matter that Claudio and Bryan were fighting with each other. They did that. They had that moment where they saw each other and were this is what we have to do now.
Yeah.
Because the whole group, Blackpool Combat Club, is they value winning. That's what really brings them together, is that they value winning.
Right. And
so that was a cool element that they told during the match. And then the reverse of it with Jericho and Sammy, where they're the heels and they're there's a part where they're trying to team up, and then Sammy's kind of in the back of his head. They tell the story throughout the match of Sammy. He does it the first time and it's cool. And then the second time when he helps Jericho, he's kind of he doesn't know if it's the right decision. And then towards the end, he just turns and realizes that, it's a championship match, every man for himself. I'm going to do what I have to do. So I thought that for Sammy, obviously, Sammy, people hate him for reasons. And ultimately what this does for him, I don't know for a lot of people, but to me at least, I was he's good. He did a great job here, and I can respect the great job that he did.
Absolutely. Quick, want to give a shout out to this because we both talked about Claudio and Bryan. The Bryan near fall where he turned into the big knee was they really got me with that one. And I knew better. I knew Bryan was going to pin Claudio for the belt, but they got me, man. He was what it was.
The Sammy one where he hits the what's his finisher called?
The go to the GTH.
The GTH. He hit that. Yeah. And then he didn't go for the cover, and he went for the was it the shooting star or 450? I can't remember.
He was a shooting star.
It was a shooting star, and it was far. It was a
It was really far.
He hit that, and I swear, while he was in the air, I went, TK's gonna do it. I was he's gonna do it.
Yeah. That was very funny. While I absolutely know there was nothing selfish in his mind doing it, it was an incredible, what's your finisher? I'll kick out of it. Because Sammy hit his finisher and another finisher. Chris just kicked out of two. I was fuck, man. I was going to shoot him. But yeah, no, there was a lot of great push finishes this one. Dukes, this must have been an absolute blast live. How did this one work for you?
It was so fun. It was never in doubt with me that Sammy's a good wrestler.
Right.
He's always been good, and especially in a match like this, he's going to do his thing because he's fucking nuts. Mm-hmm. But they did the kind of babyface here, and he still got booed, which was really funny. But overall the match was fun.
There was one funny reaction where I think Sammy tried to steal a pin or so he did something, and I think the reaction was supposed to be Sammy's finally seen, and the crowd just tried, you fucked up, because
it was when he shoved Jericho. He shoved Jericho and everyone chanted, you fucked up. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, I was I don't know if that was exactly what they were looking for, but it worked. It was a good reaction. The finish, we have not talked about the finish. Dukes and I mentioned it very briefly before we went on. Dukes explained to me that he, in the building, thought it was a senton onto Sammy, which is what it was, really. Yeah. Chris Jericho inexplicably thought that he could get within the Cesaro's, the Swiss swing, whatever the fuck we're calling it now, and land a Judas effect. He did not try to get there with his feet. He just sort of threw himself.
Yeah.
It did not look as intended, but in some ways it was so gloriously sort of it was such a terrible idea, but he went for it with such He really believed he was going to hit that fucking thing, man. It was incredible. He flew through the air.
Yeah,
He just sort of sailed through the air.
So Dukes, you thought he was trying to land on Sammy? Is that what it looked like?
Yeah, I thought that was the goal. I thought he was just jumping on Sammy. I didn't see him really turn into. I didn't see his arm.
Right. Well, he
didn't.
Think, he turned
because
so
he was so
early.
much lower than Claudio's head already. By the time he even got off the ground, there's no chance. Claudio's too tall.
I kept trying to think about it. So, do you think the last Judas effect that he hit him with, was that inaudible?
Yes.
Was the finish supposed to be?
Yeah.
I think he was supposed to knock out.
That's funny that they had the self-awareness to be like, that looked like shit. Let's wrap it up.
I think you can see I think you can see Claudio says, because Claudio doesn't even take a bump, he just does like a stagger cell.
Yeah.
Right.
He said
because it hit his chest or whatever, and he kind of went to.
There was a similar moment in the Jeff Jarrett Classic later where Sting, the idea was absolutely he was supposed to catch him for the fucking, and he blessed Sting just fell, and it's like, well, fuck, let's just do something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
So this shit happens. I legitimately, not even doing a bit, appreciate the idea that Chris thought he could ever do that. That's one of the funniest. That is dude, it's a swing. He would have to get within the swing, you know?
Yeah.
As soon as it went past, he would have had to stand next to Claudio. It's a spinning back elbow, bro. It ain't like a fucking. He can't
right.
fly.
The timing has to be more than perfect because you have to get him while he's facing you.
Yeah.
It's just...
and then you have to do the spin part. Chris's approach was he
you have
spun.
to turn around too.
Chris, rather than again, to be clear, I'm not saying he could have ever done this. I'm just trying to analyze what he attempted.
What he thought he could do.
Yeah. Rather than getting close, he turned himself and then was like, I'll just fly. I'll just throw backward. And so he just fell down. It was honestly one of the most insane things. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. I loved every minute of it. But yes, great match. Are we doing Sammy and Jericho at Final Battle? Is that what we're doing in Texas? What's the deal here? What are we doing at Final Battle? I mean, after this match, I ain't even got a problem with it. But what are we even doing at Final Battle? It's bizarre. We only got a couple of weeks now, guys. 3 weeks. What do we think?
Yeah, that's true.
That's
I
hard.
have no idea. I guess Sammy and Jericho makes sense. I thought it was gonna be Joe and Jericho for the longest, but it's definitely not.
No, it's not. He's got enough belts now, brother.
Yeah,
we'll get to that shortly. Factual. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, really, really strong match. I really do hope, and I say this, so I love the match. I hope that Claudio and Brian do something else now, especially Brian.
Especially the guy next to me was he was like, man, I love this feud. he was like, I could watch these guys wrestle all the time.
Yeah, for the last year, let us get something now.
I was like, well, they started wrestling in May, and he was like, yeah, but the story's been changing, and I'm like, yeah.
Get what you get, I suppose. Then
he's like, I can watch Brian and Jericho all day. I'm like, yep.
Wow. Okay, fair enough.
It
works.
It was crazy.
There's so many jokes about people that you could be sitting next to here that I'm not gonna make,
Yeah.
But yes, tremendous match. Quickly, because I don't think we talked about enough. Claudio Castagnoli is an absolute freak of nature. My God, he's just incredible.
Dude, the uppercuts with Brian were oh man, that was my favorite. That's one of my favorite spots of the night when they were trading him with Jericho and Sammy, and then when they did to each other, it was awesome.
This is gonna sound weird, but it was very much a WWE multi-man on steroids, and that's because they're good at those matches.
Yeah,
it was very apparent to me that 3 of these dudes worked there for a long time because it was they definitely did the thing where guys rolled in and out a lot, right? Which is but it worked. There's something to be said for that format. Okay. Next match, which I've seen a lot of mixed reviews for. Saraya up against Britt Baker, DMD. Shout out to our pal Bob. This one got some time. I think it probably didn't need this. And again, I feel like an arsehole saying that, but with what they were going for, I think they actually would have been fine at 10. I didn't think it was a bad match, at all, personally.
No.
Now, I watched this on delay, so I didn't have the live. I'm told there was a lot of this match sucks. I actually thought it was solid, and considering the circumstances of a wrestler who hasn't wrestled in 5 years and then before that missed even more time, I actually thought this was kind of a triumph just because, they achieved what they wanted to achieve. It was very steady, very solid. And I think Saraya, for her first match back, did pretty damn well. I thought Britt led very, very admirably. So I actually thought it was solid. Again, I'm not going to go beyond that, but I don't know. Chris, what did you make of this big-time women's match here with Saraya and Britt? What did you think?
I thought that with a lot of the conversations of how this could go, this was one of I wouldn't say it's like one of the best ways it could have gone,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it was definitely a lot better than what, the reverse could have been. And I think I had fun. Like I had fun with it. It was cool seeing her back in the ring. I think Excalibur especially did a great job of like putting over the fact that she is a two-time champion,
Right.
and like really making her, because it was a long time ago. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
while. So remembering the fact that she was at the top of the game at one point is
Right.
something really cool that they added to it. Um, I think there was like one power bomb from the top that they kind of was like iffy, that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
rough, but I think Saraya just needs like more time to kind of get back into the swing of it. She was a little blown up after
For
kind of
sure.
like the 5 minute mark, and that's expected.
Absolutely.
Again, it's been a while. I thought the dueling chants were really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That the crowd was into it, even if the match was slow. I think the dueling chants were not necessarily like vindication, but like kind of a testament to the fact that the feud, people cared
Yeah.
about it, regardless
I agree.
of the who is the face, who is the heel conversation.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom line was that they were interested in it, and I guess at the end of the day, that's what's important
Right.
here. And yeah, Britt's a star, man. Like
Yeah.
she did a good job protecting Saraya.
I agree.
The stomp thing, positioning was great.
Mm-hmm.
Props to her. It was good. I'm excited to
Yeah.
see what's next with Saraya.
I agree with you. Like there were definitely. I think we got a little bit carried away with the assumption they were going to like boo Saraya. Like people definitely were cheering for Britt. Like some people, like Duke, she can speak better than I can, but like it seemed like people were like happy to see Saraya and wanted her to do
For
well.
sure.
Right? That was the sense in
Yeah.
the building.
Yeah, the DMD chants were definitely like louder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like more people were doing it. There was one section like near the ramp where fucking screaming the entire time. It ruled, but they were very loud.
Wow, professional wrestling, brother.
Yeah, but I thought it was good. It was like a little slow, but I don't really know what
Sure.
you expect with the two people that were wrestling.
Yeah. Saraya definitely, I think she worked the match logically in the sense like she sold a lot, right? Like I thought she took some really nice bumps. Like I thought she was throwing herself into stuff. She wanted to sell and create this idea that like, was she ready? And obviously she even played with that for like a comedy spot early. I thought Britt did a really nice job. I think she did a very nice job of walking a line between like stuff that looked good without doing anything dumb because it's her first match in 5 years. The only thing I was saying, this is not even like but considering how much of the match was just Saraya selling, 13, I think stretched Britt to a limit to someone who can like be on top for that much of a match, right? Like, because that's part of the pace too. Like, Britt is very, I've talked about this a lot. I think Britt's her best when she can go back and forth, which is why she's good in tag matches. I think when you put her in a position where she has to like be on top for this much of a match, it's a little bit like staggered, like it doesn't flow quite how you want. So that made it, I think, exacerbated the problem that, as Chris mentioned, Saraya was feeling the pace. Of course she was. So that was a small thing, but I honestly didn't think it was a bad match like at all. I thought it was fine, solid. Again, I'm not going to tell you it was like a great match by any means, but the conclusion I think we've all got here is for a first match back, this was encouraging for Saraya. Britt obviously is solidified in her role in the division. Doesn't hurt her any, losing. So let's see what they do. One thing, they need to do a better job of really telling Saraya's story on TV. Thus far, they've said a lot that, she's back after 5 years, and they've kind of hinted at, this really, this is a great story. And Saraya is going to try her best. She was never a super worker. If we're going to make this thing work, and we're going to really make it hit, we need to tell the story correctly and get the people emotionally invested beyond just chanting for her, right? Like that's the goal here. So the next step is doing that better than they did it here. I would like to see Saraya kind of have like steady TV matches where she's getting the rust off, so to speak. I assume they're going to do Jamie and Britt versus Tony and Saraya at some point, which is a really nice TV match. So I like it. There's some good pieces in the division. The big one we'll get to later, but I think it was some stuff to like here. I thought it was a solid outing. On this show, obviously one of the weaker matches, that speaks more to the show than anything they did wrong. Up next, we just mentioned the big man. TNT title match, Samoa Joe, Wardlow, Powerhouse Hobbs. I believe on the late night Grin, I said something to the effect of if Samoa Joe wins this match, they should take Tony Khan away, I think I said. Didn't I? Something
Yes,
that...
you did.
And,
I thought of that after the finish.
Yes. Samoa Joe is my favorite wrestler ever, but even I would have been, if I had the pencil, I said I can't deal with the text shoot will send me, and I wouldn't be able to do it, But Tony don't give a fuck, does he? I mean, at the end of the day, he's gonna do what he's gonna do. He pops himself.
Yeah, he was watching the show. He called your bluff.
Well, yeah, I believe it. I think there is actually a reason in terms of these belts being unified. I think is what's happening because I think they're announcing the TV deals in for Ring of Honor, and they know they don't need 3 belts for that show. Mm-hmm. They're probably going to keep the pure. So I think Joe may combine these belts, will be my guess. I would imagine it was fun. I wish it was more explosive, Yeah. It was more blunt and kind of it was heavy. It really felt heavy. like everything they did was Jesus, man. I wish it was more dynamic, but I guess when I thought about it more, that would have been the role that Joe of yesteryear would have filled. Whereas now they are more those guys, right? Wardlow can do some explosive stuff, but he's not someone who's flashy per se, beyond the odd Jeff Hardy spot, which is always very funny. There was some very funny spots. The swanton in which Wardlow fell over and just decided to throw himself and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Which threw everything out of position. And then Joe missed the senton, and then it was quite the ordeal. But I like the match. I didn't think it was, what it could have been. You guys in the building, Dukes, appeared to be a little tired at this point. That mid-show lull wasn't as over as I wanted it to be, but I still had a good time of it. Big fellas whacking each other in there. You can't knock it, can you, Dukes? Yeah. What do you think of this one?
No, I thought it was awesome. Wardlow is the son of Jeff Hardy and Goldberg. It's insane. Yeah. Or Jeff Hardy and Batista. It's he's a fucking freak. He did a fucking whisper in the wind all the way across the ring.
He landed just right on top of Joe.
Yeah, and he almost fucking fell too.
Yeah, always.
He almost fell on the swanton too. It makes it better.
It does, absolutely. What was the reaction in the building to the result? I was stunned.
I was stunned. I stood there with my fucking mouth open, just standing up. A lot of people were chanting. A lot of people wanted Joe to win. I got the feeling of because Samoa Joe. Mm-hmm. But
I get this. I think. We talk about Jeff Jarrett and the perception element of Jeff Jarrett. He's perceived as loser wrestling, whether right or wrong. That's the way. I don't think the wrestling fan who goes to AEW perceives Joe as an old guy. No. They just see him as Samoa Joe. Yeah, it's really weird, right?
My dad was so pissed that Samoa Joe won.
That rules.
Because he turned on Wardlow. Never forgive him.
It kind of rules that in this match, Joe's role was the wily old guy. Yeah. Because when they went head to head, the other guys just kicked the shit out of him. Mm-hmm. But he sort of figured out how to... It's fucking hilarious. Chris, what did you make of this TNT title match?
I agree with you in terms of the Joe unification, where that's going. I think I have a similar belief that it's for the TV deal. Mm-hmm. But it was I don't know. I didn't love the match. I thought it could have been more, and maybe that's my fault for thinking that. But I agree. I think it was a little heavy. I think. I didn't hate it. It was just okay. It was just another match for me. Mm. But no, I like the result. So I'm excited about the result because I love Joe. So
it'll be interesting, where kind of how they program Joe. The final battle matches, because I see a lot of people talking about Wardlow, but I'm something is weird to me about that match being a final battle,
Wardlow. Especially what you mentioned before. Yeah, Wardlow on Ring of Honor kind of doesn't sound like what I would expect. And also the fact that it's right around the corner is a little tough. So I'm sure Wednesday we're gonna get answers on that. I just don't know who it could be.
Right. I think if this is gonna be a real TNT title run for Joe, which I don't know that'll be the case, but if it is, I think we've got to go more Miro than Cody Rhodes. Right? He's got to be more promo, and he can have fun matches, but I don't think he needs to be going out there as a work rate champ.
It's not a weekly defense thing. It's
Absolutely, and it's interesting, man. I don't. My instinctual reaction is it's kind of an insane result, but we've got to see if the unification is right. Because if it is, that makes sense, because they don't need 3 belts from Ring of Honor, obviously. But
I think taking the title off Wardlow, if that was the plan, I think this was the way to do it with the triple with the triple threat the way it was. Yeah, I think that this was the way if you were going to do it. I don't know if that's the right decision now, but for what they were going for, I guess this is the way. This is the right way to do it.
Yeah, I think it is a genuine let it play out. We have to see what the actual point was because Joe could legit drop the belt back to Wardlow. And it was just a way to give him extra cred because it's where as a fan of Joe, like I kind of quickly got the sense he was going to win because he was every time he got in there, he would just bump for guys, and I was like, I kind of put it together in my head like Joe just turned heel. If he wasn't going over as I assumed, or if he was taking the fall the way I assumed, he would have like given himself more spots along the way. He only had like the dive and a couple of signature things, so. Yeah, no, it was a good time. I didn't think it was great or anything, but I had fun with it, and we will see where they go with the finish. Definitely caught me off guard. So
I think it helps the fact that like nobody, like everyone everyone likes Joe, so we can give them the let's let this play out as opposed to if it was somebody else, we'd be like, okay, this kind of sucks.
You know, it's like the point earlier, right? It's like, look, Joe is a shell of who he was, obviously. But the audience doesn't see him that way. Like, they don't see it as like an old guy. Even though, look, if we're being real, it is an old guy getting the beat. Joe's, 43? Mm-hmm. But the audience just sees him as Samoa Joe. He's kind of forever in that way. So I think they can get away with it. And we'll see kind of how things develop on TV. I will say the visual of Joe with both belts is like one of the funniest, like weirdest things that wrestling has produced this year. That covers a lot of ground, I know. But him, like, they both look so tiny on the TNT belt.
I noticed that.
Toy belt, right?
The second they gave him the TNT title, I was like, did it get smaller? Like,
This was interesting. I agree here with Paul. He says the thing after the match with Wardlow and Hobbs was interesting. It was. They both sort of nodded at each other like, yeah, fucking smart Joe guy, right? It was the kind of the vibe. It's interesting.
They should both jump him next week. That would fucking rule.
Imagine them as a team. Can you imagine how mad people would go on the internet? It would rule.
Yeah.
We'd just be having a blast on LNG when everyone gets really mad. That's never happened before. All right, enough about Samoa Joe winning the TNT title. This next match, I'm just going to go out and say it. This has a 6.39 on Cage Match, which is the only evidence you need. That site should be defunded and imploded. No disqualification tag match. Darby Allin and Sting over Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. All right, listen, I don't give a fuck what rating this guy. This thing was a hoot, man. They poured into the crowd. Jeff was taking these crazy bumps around the ring. The Satnam spot where he caught Darby. Oh, my goodness.
Crazy cash. That was insane.
And then what about what he did when he just sort of flung him in the air? He didn't even look where he was falling. They did that deal. Then Sting does a dive. Satnam sort of catches him. They get to the ring. And then they just sort of do a tag match for a few minutes. There's a guitar involved. This is professional. This is what I'm talking about, dude, because this is the good stuff. This must have been great time live.
100%. Jarrett's entrance, we can't skip that. Jarrett's fucking entrance. He got like a spooky Tron with like the red smoke. Oh my god!
It didn't sound like you guys were like reacting at all. By the way,
It was fucking. I was.
He was.
Because like maybe I mean, but like on pay-per-view, it felt like they were just like dead silent while Jeff was like yelling at them. And he was trying.
That adds to it, doesn't it? Like
he was like looking for people to fight and argue with.
Yeah.
Like, there was one dude on the other side who was like, just put their hand up for a high five, and he was like, piece of shit. Let's get in their face. He's such a tremendous heel, but you're right, we should have done the entrance. But in the match itself, dude, so you on board, this was a fucking blast, wasn't it?
Oh, it was awesome. I missed the fucking trying to get the video of Sting diving. I was very mad. But, yeah, it was crazy.
It was a scary dive, too. Scary dive.
He's fucking insane. Him and Darby don't miss on pay-per-view.
Right. It's kind of like, I don't think we fully talk enough about how nuts Sting is, though. Like,
it's he's hanging out with fucking Darby too much.
He's like 60-something, dude.
63. Get the fuck out of here.
That is crazy. Yeah, they're like a legit awesome team. It's pretty strange how we've ended up here.
Yeah.
Chris, what did you make of this Jeff Jarrett classic here, rather on pay-per-view?
Yeah, anytime anytime Sting does something crazy like that, my dad's like, man, that guy was wrestling when I was a kid. Like, that's crazy. That's insane. But just in general, like how I talked about how like those elite trios matches to me are just elite trios matches. This is a Sting tag, and like in the best sense of what that is. Immediately when they said no DQ, I was like, okay, he's gonna do the thing he's gonna jump off a tunnel or something. Right away. Mm-hmm. I thought it was great, man. And hey, whatever, fuck cage match. Like we talked about we talked about this match, and we got like 16 chats immediately. Everybody popping for Satnam Singh.
Yeah.
So like the catch was great. The death drop thing when Darby had to do the coffin drop onto him was awesome. That was awesome. And man, it was I had such a good time. Jeff Jarrett's such a pop. Like
Yeah.
on the vibes chart, we gotta.
It might be
This is high.
It's pretty high.
There's the spot I mentioned earlier where the lethal injection catch and Sting fell down and like legitimately did not stand up for like 5 minutes, and I was like, "Well, fuck, I don't know, man. I guess this is just what Sting does now." I don't know. I assume he like goes home and just lays in bed for like a week and just fucking recover. I don't know what he does. He's ridiculous.
Wait, back to the entrance really quickly. When Darby's like when Jeff's looking at Darby, and Darby's doing like the point, and it takes Jeff so long to figure out what's going on. It was so funny.
Oh, I have the video on my phone. It's like 40 seconds long of Joe Jarrett.
That shot that stayed on Jeff
looking at Darby. Yeah,
he's going like this.
He like looks behind him. He's like,
he comes back.
Yeah,
he's tremendous. I
think he's a fucking choke slam.
Yes.
As a young person, that's like peak Jeff Jarrett to me. It's just that, like,
This is right to be brought up because we talk about, but the way he was bumping in this match, Jeff's incredible shape, man.
He took Darby's spear like a fucking champ.
Like I know people don't want. People probably get mad, but like I would genuinely like him to wrestle Darby in a singles on like Rampage or something. Like I think they'd actually have a legitimately good match.
It would be good.
I ain't even gonna. You know what? I pulled that punch. Fuck it. I want to see Jeff Jarrett wrestle all the guys I think are good on this roster because I think Jeff Jarrett's actually like very good at professional wrestling. Put it on Rampage so me and the other sickos can enjoy it. You know, like we don't need Dynamite. I don't want to see the quarter hour and get dunked on. But like, listen, you throw up a graphic, Jeff Jarrett and Eddie Kingston on Rampage. You don't know the kind of thrills that gives me, brother. Throwing that fucking uppercut punch.
Another crazy part about this is like I complained a lot about the segments leading up to this, like a lot about it. But then the match came and I completely forgot about all that stuff. Like at least me, I was like, "This is awesome."
Mm-hmm. This is inspired.
Oh my god!
Jeff Jarrett kind of promos about Hook, and like he would absolutely work in shots about Taz too, and Taz would get like mad about it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's absolutely fabulous. Like, oh my goodness, Dax the Axe chopping Jeff. Jeff doing dunks about how he is on Twitter and stuff.
Taking Cesaro's swing, the Claudio's swing.
That match would rule. Good call. All right, tremendous stuff. Okay, women's title, interim women's title, I guess.
No,
Jamie Hayter,
the real women's title. The real women's
title. Jamie Hayter and Toni Storm. This was incredibly physical. For the first half of the match, the crowd was like they were with it, but you could tell, like, you know, again as we said, fatigue. But they was hitting each other so hard. The people came with it, and there was this thing, and this didn't surprise me by any means. We'd actually talked about it a lot. I knew the people want Jamie to win. I think a lot of people was aware, right?
Yeah.
But like the drama down the stretch here was nuts, and I love the match, but it's one of the weirdest dynamics because the more she cheated, the more that you guys said we got to see it.
Yeah.
And each time
by any means necessary, she needs to win.
And it's like this is why I hate these like generic critiques of wrestling, like this is overbooked or this is that. It's like everything's case by case.
Mm-hmm.
On paper, was this overbooked? Sure. But did you hear them? I mean, they were going bananas for this shit.
I did hear them.
You heard them. You were right next to them. You were one of them. So it worked a treat. It was kind of bonkers to watch in that sense. Because after every time she kicked out, you assumed that was it and she was not going to win after all. And it was like this sort of emotional roller coaster. Yeah. But they did the deal. Title change. Dukes, I know you're a big fan of Great Britain's own Jamie Hayter. What did you think of this? This was a huge match for both of them. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it was incredible. Like, I thought it had potential to be like, we were talking in the Discord the other night about like what match wasn't being talked about a lot, but could like sneaky like steal the show. And this was most of our pick. And it did that.
Yeah.
Like towards the end, each near fall was like it never dropped.
Right.
There was no like the momentum never slowed down. It just kept going. And then when Britt came out, everyone was like, well, when Rebel came out the first time, I was like, oh fuck. They're gonna screw out of the win. And then Britt came out and helped her, and I was like, oh, this is better than I could have fucking expected. This is better than what I thought was gonna happen by a mile.
Yeah. And then they did another kick out.
Yes.
And then Britt got on the corner. And then you assumed she was going to pull the buckle off and Jamie was going to hit the buckle.
Yes.
But instead she hit Britt, only for Tony to hit the buckle. And this was like,
it was
again,
fucking insane.
This is
and
why
they nailed every fucking spot.
That's
they
important. The execution was perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like Tony has been great, and I think we need to talk about how, because I think this was obviously the right decision. Because look,
she got a standing ovation when she was like walking out, like through.
Rightly so, because it was never ever a knock on Tony, but Jamie's just over. She's organically over right now, So like you had to go with it, but Tony deserves credit for her run. But her work in this match especially was like, I thought, excellent. Like, she really laid her stuff in, and she seems to enjoy the physicality that Jamie always brings, and they kind of they matched in that regard. So yeah, it was absolutely a home run. Chris, what did you make of the women's title match here?
I think
interim world, whatever the hell,
whatever we call it. Yeah. I think this is my new favorite AEW women's match. I think, dude, it was awesome. I had to like you said, on paper, it seems overbooked. But the fact that they hit on every single one and the crowd was there for it really helped it. Like Duke said, there wasn't a point where they lost the momentum that they were building. It kept going up, and the near falls for this one. I said it for which one, the 4-way, but this one was like a different level of near falls where I every single time I bet I was like, no, it's over, it's over. And I think we sometimes can criticize Tony Khan a lot for the decision making with things like this, in terms of like the some turns. But I think the fact that like I kind of when Britt came out was like, oh, she's probably something's gonna happen here.
Yeah.
And the fact that she celebrated with her was cool to me. Like I was like, okay, we don't need to do the obvious right away. Especially even though they teased it a while back or a few times. Like, we don't need to do that right away. We'll see that for sure. That's coming down the line. But for right now, this is Jamie's moment, so we're gonna let that breathe. That was really cool.
I agree. It's definitely interesting that, like, the top two title matches on this show, the audience, gleefully willed on the heel cheating, right? Like, that's definitely an interesting place to be, and there are challenges that come with that, but like, I think if you watch this match and your conclusion is why did they cheer the heel, I think you've kind of missed the point, because this was such a big moment for the division to have a match over like this. I actually think we kind of need to do a better job of like providing context to what Jamie has achieved here in terms of her popularity. Look, guys, let's be honest about it. There are a lot of wrestlers who are over online who are not really over in the buildings, and there's all over the show, and that is what it is. A lot of it isn't their fault. Jamie has been over online since she came in, and she's awesome, and everyone agrees Jamie's like just tremendous. However, at some point in the last 6 months, maybe, it went from this thing we all agree on online to like she's like legitimately their biggest star in terms of popularity. Like it deserves a live crowd. Obviously, Britt has her own, and Britt has an argument in that regard, and Saraya's more famous. But she's over, man. It's incredible. It's really striking.
That's cool, but another thing, going back to Tony, is like I really hope, and I know we talk about this a lot. Like every time there's a women's feud, whoever the loser is, we're like confused as to what's next for them. I really hope Tony gets into something important, whether it's a rematch for this or whatever it is, because I really loved her run, as short as it was. I think she when she was coming down for entrance, I was like, man, like she found. I'm sure. Like I hope she's happy. She's the champ. Like it felt. Like I remember listening to her podcast with Renee when she left WWE, and now she lost her love for it. It's like I hope she has it back, because this I've really enjoyed this. So I hope that they find a way to keep her on TV consistently, because she's had some incredible matches. She's given it her all constantly, which is something that I was afraid of kind of towards the beginning of like I hope they treat her right so that she stays in it, she stays going 100%. And she's been doing that. So I hope eventually, whenever the Thunder Rosa thing gets sorted or whatever, I hope she gets the real, whatever we call it, like the real run,
Yes. She should be in the lineage, right? Like she did a lot for the belt.
Absolutely.
I've talked about it a lot. I think they need to get more creative with Tony in terms of like how to present her as a character. right? Like, and this is not. And look, folks, I have no interest in saying anything but positive things about Toni Storm after the run she's had, the performance she had. But like, you can tell there is a difference in how people like Toni Storm, but there's not yet like an emotional connection where people really root for her, right? And you saw that with this, like, and it's not.
Yeah,
that's just the way it works sometimes, man. Like, the way things come together.
For her, you can just appreciate that she's good, but there's nothing. I wouldn't say nothing because whatever. For some people, maybe, but for me at least, there's nothing that's like I don't. Besides the fact that she's the good guy and Jamie's the bad guy, I didn't have a reason to be like, I hope Toni Storm comes away with the win here. It was more like this felt like Jamie needed it more in terms of like who was hot at the time.
And there are some wrestlers, Jamie Hayter being one of them, clearly, who she doesn't need that. She's just that charismatic. She's like super. She could just go past that. That she can't be contained by that kind of idea of how wrestling should or shouldn't work. But I think you need to work a little harder with Toni, because I think we all agree she's pretty fucking cool, right? And she certainly has this incredible style, look, and feel. But you need to now try and figure out a way to make that connection work, because I think her work clearly deserves that. So hopefully they get creative. I agree. Even if they don't, Chris, I agree. Just keep her in the picture. She's done great. This was a huge moment for the division, guys. Like we all have talked about like positive steps, but at the end of the day, they have 4 pay-per-views a year, basically. And too often, unfortunately, a lot of time it hasn't been the woman's fault, but unfortunately, these matches are like, they're the cool down. And it's not, no matter what you do in the build, that's not where you want to be. This was certainly no cool down. Like they were rocking as Dukes, as a test. So it was special moment. Saraya and Jamie Hayter both won, which I think should mean that there's like a national holiday here in Great Britain. The Brits win again, right, Dukes? You're a big fan of the Brits.
Impact won.
My goodness, what a time, huh? Who needs the World Cup?
And the main event.
Oh yes, I was thinking.
Neither of them are British, but
yes,
British adjacent.
Yeah, there you go. Got you. The Brit left with a winner, is what you're saying. Yeah. I like it. Okay, so yeah, tremendous match. Credit both women. They may have stole the headlines, honestly. Seems like that's kind of been my read on it. All right. Up next, a rematch of a match that stole the headlines at the last pay-per-view, in fairness. The tag titles, the Acclaimed, up against Swerve in Our Glory. I thought they did a lot of good stuff here, but unfortunately, this was a very tough place to be on the card. And I thought they had a good match. They were never going to quite recapture the magic of that first one, because that's like, you can't. That was like so special. People couldn't believe how good that was. I thought they did a really good job. I will say, knowing where it was in the show, I don't think they needed this much time. Like, I think they could have got to the final stretch earlier, but I thought they did a hell of a job. And I think everyone involved made the most of what they had here in terms of circumstances. But it's just when you're this deep in the show and you're following that match, like the first half of it, you're basically doomed, right? Like, people are not going to buy it until you get right to the end of the match. So, Dukes, what did you make of this? Is that something you kind of felt in the building, like a kind of fatigue? What did you think of it?
For sure. And the way this match was, it's the third of the trilogy.
Yeah.
So it was a little more like story oriented. It was more about Swerve and Keith, honestly, than it was the Acclaimed.
I agree.
So I think that had a lot to do with it too. And the last 5-10 minutes were fucking awesome though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was some bits in the middle where they kind of it felt like they were stretching things for him. Once they got going at the end, definitely. And I love the way they executed the Swerve and Keith business, and I've always enjoyed the way Keith portrays that like those issues. He's absolutely overacting in a way, but he looks really hurt.
Yeah.
By Swerve being a dick, it's like, come on, bro. He's a dick. He's been a dick for months. Forget about it. So it was good to just see him walk off. Swerve was vicious here as ever. There was one kick he threw to the back of Bowen's head that
he did
snapped
5
him.
in a row.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Fucking ruled.
That was great stuff. Chris, what did you make of the tag title match, the rubber match here?
Yeah, same. I think the last 5 minutes were really strong. The Acclaimed had a really good run. I've been really happy with the match that they've had with Swerve and Keith. The breakup was cool. They executed that nicely. Again, Keith's acting is a little weird, but I like before in kind of the build to it where it's been he knows that he's a dick, but he's This is our goal. Our goal is to get this, so I'm just gonna stick with it because this is what I want. So yeah, that was cool. I thought it was nice that they did the breakup here. If there's a Swerve Keith feud, which I think there's going to be coming out of this, really excited for that. That's going to be really fun. So yeah, it was good. Like everybody, I think, came out of this looking good.
Yeah, it's been a really successful feud, right? I think too seldom, like Tony doesn't often do like this kind of feud where it was a 3-match series. It went on for like 3 months basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like everyone comes out of it good. You know, you've set up that singles feud, which we're all excited about. The Acclaimed are golden, obviously. I mean, they were already over, but this feud is, you can't even put into words what this feud did for them because just on the first match alone. And the second and third match is really good too, but the first match was like transformative for them. So it's worked for everyone. And, you know, I think the Acclaimed have certainly shown they have the work to back up the gimmick and how over they are as characters. Max has come a long way on that. I mean, we always like Bones, the worker, right? But Max has really developed, and I don't think you can argue with where they're at here. I think, you know, I was never a big believer, as we know, but I think at this point, you got to keep rolling with the Acclaim, right? I mean, they are
for sure
one of the hottest acts in the company, and they're the only baby faces on that list, right? We talk about all the heels. You're supposed to root for those guys, so it's working. Really good match. If it goes earlier in the show, it probably is considered a great match, but that's just how things work out sometimes. It's no one's fault. On this night, other people stole the show. They got the last one, so it is what it is. Tremendous stuff. Excited to see the singles for sure. All right. Let's move on here. Main event time. MJF, Jon Moxley. Very, very intrigued by the kind of general thoughts on this as I watched it, because this was one of those matches where they were never going to get you into some shenanigans when you knew something was going to happen here, which is really hard to work with. But I thought they did an incredible job. Moxley, we all knew he was going to get booed. I didn't think he was going to get "fuck you, Mox" chance. That was a little much.
I did not partake in those.
That was a little.
That's where you draw the line.
But my God, did he go with it and embrace it?
Yeah.
Max has
I
always been.
I was booing. I did not say "fuck you, Moxley." I want that on the record.
Fair. MJF loves the thing where he is the pole driver and sells his knee. Loves it. He does a great job of it every time.
He does it all the time.
I thought it was really, really good. And again, I think this was a really hard match to do in that way because the show's 5 hours in. The crowd knows there's going to be shenanigans. So you're waiting for, a ref bump or something. I thought it was really, really good. Chris, what did you make of the main event?
I thought, that was awesome. I think, and I'm not sure it's for everybody, but the consensus was kind of like MJF was going to win this because I think because like Mox, he needs his vacation time and it's MJF's time. He just, whatever, he came back. I thought that from a production standpoint, like the camera work was great on like the zoom ins to Mox and MJF both were awesome. MJF's facial expressions are some of my favorite in wrestling. Because even if it's over the top sometimes, I don't know, it just adds to the drama of it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It suits him. That's who he is. I thought it was really cool. I think the finish was always what the question mark was for this. And, I'll give Tope credit that he called this exactly what was going to happen. But that's the only thing I'll give him credit for. But I thought it was really cool. The first ref bump, I could have sworn MJF was going to, do that thing when he's in the choke. I thought he was gonna do that thing where he kicks back and low blow, and he didn't do it. It was cool because they're like, oh wait, no, he is gonna do it. He's gonna do the turn, whatever. And just the build to the finish was awesome. Regal he did such a great job of acting it where he was like, no, it really seemed like he was in it for Mox. So go wake him up. We need to do this. Let's wrap this up. And then Mox goes away immediately. Brass knucks, awesome work.
Yeah, the timing and the execution that was perfect, right? That was done absolutely expertly. We'll talk about that direction in a second, kind of what we think of that, because I think a lot of us, if Tope got it, then fuck. I mean, the masses must have seen it coming. But we'll talk about it in a second. But Dukes, what do you think of the match?
I liked it a lot. My dad was very bored because he was like, "Fuck." He's like, "Max is getting his ass kicked."
Yeah.
Until the end, which is true. But the pile driver through the fucking table
that was crazy.
Terrifying. When I saw the first replay and then the other angle, I was like, okay, he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But The finish was amazing. I'm very happy there was no firm shenanigans. I'm happy that it was just Regal.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'm very excited to see where it goes. And yeah, we'll get to more after.
I love Moxley's performance. I mean, I think we've all rightly praised him for most of the year. I think as of late, he's probably he's probably suffered from overexposure just because he's wrestled so much on TV and people kind of like take him for granted. But the way he embraced the booze, I think he's going to come back as a heel eventually. I think he's actually going to reunite with the New Yorker we were talking about earlier for a little bit and then beat the fuck out of him, is my guess, would be my assumption. Yeah, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Which will be some great TV because it's the switch, I think that's what they'll do, but that's a guess, obviously. So he had a great performance. MJF, we've all said this for the longest time. If you're still doing the thing of wait, Max can wrestle, good Lord, man, come on.
Yeah.
We've all done this bit for 3 years now.
Grow up.
He's a great performer, right?
Yeah.
He can wrestle. Is what it is. No, I think anyone still questioning that part of the puzzle is wrong. I think there's other parts that we can now get into. So the finish, I think we can all agree the Regal thing's very interesting, right? As an idea, those two together, and this idea of true villains and the devil and this shit, it's awesome. I know it's not that big of a deal, but I must say I am slightly concerned for the poor baby faces that are gonna have to wrestle this guy because he is. I mean, Dukes, you were there. He's crazy over right now, isn't he? I mean, it's would you say he's the most over guy on the show at the moment? It feels that way.
Probably, yeah. Him, the elite now, but probably Max as singles.
It's hard, man. I think Ricky will be fine just because he's fresh. It's it's a TV match. But if you put him in a long feud with anyone at this point, it's going to be difficult, and that's the one thing they're going to have to work through. And it's not there's worse problems to have. He's red hot. You can figure it out. That's the one challenge coming out of this. But I'm excited to see this act on TV. Chris, what are you kind of looking for here with MJF and Regal? Is this something you want to see these guys by each other's side in segments? That's certainly what I would like to see. What do you think, Chris? Would you like to see this?
Absolutely. Because it's something that we haven't seen before, at least in AEW, until I can't recall another as big as this, seemingly, of two big villains, one with the first one that comes to mind is Punk and Heyman, where they can both talk, type of thing. But I'm not sure that's gonna be that type of relationship, but something to that effect where I guess I'm not sure if Regal will be talking for him. I hope not, because MJF is MJF and he can definitely do that for himself. But I think Regal can add something, add some sort of credibility to him being the villain that he is. Another thing I'll say about Max winning is just someone said it earlier, but the belt looks like it was made for him. I don't know how to describe that.
Yeah.
But when he came into the presser and everything, it was that it was made for him. I'm happy that he got it. I'm really excited again, just because we haven't seen something like this in a while, to see what that pairing is.
For sure, yeah. I think I would like him to play it as he's the head coach. And this idea that this incredible natural talent and this prodigy, MJF, is now under the tutelage of this master of wrestling.
Right, and he's already is the world champion.
Yeah.
He's only 25, 26. He's already the champion, and now he has this guy, so everybody should be fucking scared as to what this guy's gonna turn into.
The idea that he can now become the real villain, he thought he was bad before, he's a monster now. And you can play around that and do a lot of different things with that. And you can have baby faces say that he's a pretender, and you can just do it. It's compelling. He's also a great champion because he's the guy who can bridge the gap for for the pillars and the younger guys. He feels like their peer, right? He's above them all, but you can put a Jungle Boy up against Max, and it feels natural in that way. So he can elevate guys as champion. That part of it's really, really fun. Dukes, how do you kind of see this looking here? MJF as champ, Regal by his side. How do you sense this is going to
go? I think you're right. It's going to be he's a real villain now. He's a real bad guy. I mean, the media scrum promo was fucking incredible.
Amazing, yeah.
It was fucking incredible. And, just thinking of him not doing haha, you're fat, type shit.
Yeah.
He's going to be the real fucking bad guy now is very exciting.
Like truly sadistic. Yeah, I think there's something to it, and I think he's obviously capable of doing it. We've all talked about he's capable of anything. It's just it's a matter of him being directed in the right way, and I think there's a lot to be excited about him as champ. The Blackpool Combat Club's interesting. I think there's a chance that is like a thing you get a lot of program out of in terms of the way those guys go their own direction. I'm really intrigued what Utah does because, like, who is Utah's loyalty actually to? Like, is it Regal at all? Or is it because we know the Bryan thing was an issue? Is him and Claudio going to be a team? That'd be awesome. I don't know.
Especially if Mox is going to be off TV. But I mean, I'm assuming that there's been no indication, but I'm assuming because he was supposed to go on vacation that he will go on vacation. If he's off TV, to see where they go from that is going to be interesting. I hope they had an idea of what they were going to do.
It's especially interesting because if you assume he's off, the other three guys are under the kind of Ring of Honor like umbrella, right?
Right.
So you would assume Final Battle is going to give us like some insight to that. So they're going to go quick because maybe not Bryan, but Claudio and Utah I would expect to be on Final Battle. So you're going to kind of get an idea like this is a good kind of pull here. Like Moxley called Utah's young boy. Like that could suggest loyalty, or that could absolutely be used by Utah as like a promo thing. Like, oh, he just beat your young boy. Like, who the fuck am I? Young boy? Like, there's so much different things at play here.
That could be so good for him too.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Like this is interesting. The Blackpool Combat Club is absolutely again one of those things in history that people are like, it's like a trivia question, like where they were a group, which is a bummer and so because I think we all think it could have been more, right? Yeah. Like I will say in reality it was very hard to book. I think they found, and the only way to do it really was to have them dominate the show, and like that's not how Tony operates. He likes the thing to be spread, so it never quite came where it could have been, but it was fun to have in the meantime, right? Like it was a good time. You sacrifice that for the hot angle, and hopefully this stuff is great. I did see Paul mention that there's some speculation about Regal's contract. I know nothing about it, so I don't know. If Regal goes back after 1 year, I think we can all agree it was just a blast to have him on AEW TV for a year, and that's that, right? God bless him. Right. There you go. Stacked Dynamite coming up on Wednesday. We've got Ishii and Jericho, the 7th. All of this stuff's going on. But before we do some other stuff, final thoughts on the show. Full Gear, Chris. I'll go you first. Everyone pretty much unanimous rave reviews this one. Based on it, talking with you about it, I think we're all on board. Right, this was a great show, Chris. What do you think?
Yeah, it was so fun. Especially like obviously a lot of questions coming out of the last one. For reasons, but it delivered. It delivered. This was an AEW pay-per-view. Like, it had everything. Most things delivered. The things that delivered really delivered. The things that didn't seemed harmless. Really, in looking back on it, we're not going to remember that stuff. We're going to remember the Elite coming back. We're going to remember the finish to the main event. We're going to remember that this was when Max won the championship. Mm-hmm. So I think all those things being said, obviously Jamie having her moment, they got a lot of momentum going into the end of the year with a lot of big shows coming up. So I'm really excited. I had a lot of fun watching this. I had high expectations, but I had more fun than I thought I was going to have too. Mm-hmm. So that's good. Really excited to see where they go.
Yeah, I think it definitely exceeded expectations. Even if, as you did, you kind of thought it would be good, I think it still blew it away. Dukes, you were there, mate. What did you think? Final thoughts on Full Gear?
I had a fucking blast last night. It was amazing. It's probably in their top 5 pay-per-views probably ever. Might be like third.
Yeah.
All Out 2021 Forbidden Door and this probably are my top 3. I'm very thankful that I got to see it. The antics outside of the arena after. I don't know if everyone saw my tweet, but everyone was chanting MJF outside the arena, and a little kid started crying and telling everyone to shut up and like screaming at them. Yeah,
that's
fucking back.
That's both hilarious and tragic all at once. That's rules. A lot going on. Was he a Moxley fan, or was it just too much noise?
I assume so. I guess he just fucking hates MJF, which
fair.
He saw through the bull. He's the only one that saw through the bullshit. So man.
That kid was like, "Dude's a devil, man. You guys are crazy." Forbidden Door, I think was just about the one that I think is interesting. Is like, I'm clearly the high man on Revolution. I think it runs it close. it was definitely better than All Out and Double or Nothing this year, right? Definitely.
For sure. Yeah.
I do think Revolution was like an incredible show. So they're close to me.
Yeah.
They had a very similar feel in terms of like, for a 5-hour block of wrestling, this was paced amazingly well, man. Like it was just like, and I thought it breathed more than some of their efforts have. Like I did think, even the little 1-minute video inserts, I thought it had it. So, a home run. Absolutely. I think 9, 10 out of 10, whatever the hell.
Yeah.
One of their best shows ever, basically. Right, is the conclusion.
Good vibes.
Factual. Great vibes, right?
Immaculate vibes, I'd actually say.
Wow. Really?
That's the top of the chart.
Big words.
Very good. Now, that was, the preview was good, but this was pretty good, right? This show was pretty good.
I'd say so.
I thought so. Now, guys, if you enjoyed this show, we have some good news, right, boys? This is something you can now look forward to on the weekly Late Night Grin calendar. We're not going to just review Full Gear every week. That'd be weird. But we are going to come on here on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, depending on where you are in the world, Sunday night, and we're going to talk AEW. We're resurrecting the world-famous Fleet Week, which I sure hope Shoot has not deleted the intro. Here it is. Here we go, boys. Look at this. There it is, boys. We're back. So Sundays, myself, 2 great young lions of the Late Night Grin. Also, our friend Tope Suicide is going to be here too, moving forward. Lots of talk about vibes, right? That's what I hear. Lots of talk about vibes. There's graphs.
A lot of vibes.
Yes, a lot of graphics.
Yes.
And we're going to come on here each Sunday and talk about the week of AEW. Look ahead to the week that's coming after. You guys saw how I formatted the show before. We're going to do that, and obviously in a more roundtable way. Because I like, you guys, you have that youthful exuberance. You have that optimism. You don't do the bits about how wrestling sucks now that Oracle and I do. It's good. So I'm very excited about it. Again, we'll get underway next week. Chris, you fired up for some Fleet Week moving forward, brother?
Really excited. I always love coming on here with you guys, so it's really fun. I love the Discord especially is like kind of – I've had my moments this past couple months where I'm like a little low on wrestling. And then stuff like that and talking about it really, elevates it for me, so I'm really excited.
Do you guys not have any heat on the Discord, now that you're like signed to deals with the Late Night Grin? Is there any pushback, any heat because you're office now? How does that work on the Discord?
No, they just expect us to bring things up on the show. I get that a lot.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That rules.
Yeah.
Like what kind of things? Like burials?
Sometimes.
Hey, tell Joe that Oracle sucks or something.
Yeah. I mean, we got graphics.
Duder has a lot of
already.
pitches.
Yeah. Okay, fair. Dukes, fired up for some Fleet Week, brother, moving forward?
Very fired up. I was a Fleet Week stan in the beginning, in the early days. So I'm glad it's back.
This is the 3rd version of Fleet Week.
That's true.
The first one was Shoot's pitch. This was going to be a show on the platform. It was going to be before Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did it for 2 weeks, messed up a prediction and said he would never do it again. And instead pivoted to the Late Night Grim, which is now a thing that we apparently do on Thursdays now, I guess, right? It's the thing we do. It goes on for hours and hours and hours every week. So that's the thing. So Fleet Week, Sundays moving forward, folks. We hope you've enjoyed this. A preview of things to come. This was a great show. The wrestling show was pretty good too. No, I'm just playing. Full Gear was awesome. Big show for AEW. And now we see what they do with that momentum. It's going to be very interesting. They have a lot to play with here. Let's hope they maximize. Before we go out here, Chris, any plugs, any promotions, any final thoughts, so on and so forth, brother?
Just check out Wrestle Purists, I guess. Check out Fleet Week next Sunday and all the Sundays after that, hopefully. Or as many as we're going to do, for the foreseeable future. Sign contracts. Just check all that stuff out. My Wrestling Burner on Twitter. Excited to do more of these.
Absolutely, bro. For Wrestle Purists, I will have a review of Jungle Boy Luchasaurus on there, hopefully in the next couple of days. I'm also going to do one of Jamie and Tony. I was going to do a review of the Elite match, and I realized that it would just be like a paragraph movie. Like, this was really fucking good. I really have nothing. I mean, there was detail, but like at some point, you just have to kind of just let it be, right? What's the point, We all know the deal. It was great. What do you want from me? So I'm going to try and cover those 2 over on Wrestle Purists. Lots of great stuff on Wrestle Purists. The depth charts are coming over there too, right? Like our running depth chart bit is going to just be like a thing on Wrestle Purists, like ESPN.com.
That rules.
Which I bullied Montgomery into doing. So we've got a lot to look forward to over there. Dukes, plugs, promotions, so on and so forth.
Watch Fleet Week on Sundays.
Fair.
Duke's Grin on Twitter. That's it. I don't really care if you follow me on Twitter. Twitter sucks.
Is Twitter still alive?
I think so. It was so funny how everyone did a funeral service for Twitter that night, and they're just still here.
It was a little much, wasn't it?
It was
a lot.
Hey, look, this is just me. I mean, Late Night Grim wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for Twitter. But I don't think you need to do a thread about Twitter's impact on your life, bro.
So funny. Some people were getting their shit in though. It fucking ruled.
There was some very funny tweets.
Yeah.
But there was also some where it was like, "Hey man, let's just talk about how great Twitter's been." I was like, let's take it easy.
Relax.
Yeah, let's take it easy. Don't get carried away. But anyway, you heard it. All those Twitter accounts, if we're still alive over there, follow us over there. And I will be back tomorrow on the aforementioned Wrestle Purist for Wrestle Purist Worldwide. Myself, Monty, and Manny talking about God only knows what. Probably doing those depth charts actually for the website. So join us over there. I don't know if I'm going to do anything else on the Grin tomorrow. Tuesday, Fed Dead Survivor Series preview. We're going to do Deciding the Decade at some point, probably Friday, I don't know. Grin on Thursday. It's Thanksgiving, I'm told. Shoot's doing the show. Fuck it, I don't know, man. That's Thursday, and then we'll figure out as we go. Okay, folks. Lots to look forward to. War Games next week. We'll have some fun with that. And we're glad you enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed it anyway. If you didn't, then I guess nothing to be glad about. But nonetheless, Full Gear fucking ruled. Follow the lads, support the lads. We'll see you for Fleet Week next week. Keep grinning, all hail. In the meantime, enjoy this outro.